We're going to go ahead and get started. But everyone could take a seat. Welcome to the May 9th, 2024 Foundation of Falcon Marsh Board Meeting. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Okay, Paul, would you please take roll, certify the quorum, and provide proof?
Let me start the sound check for George to make sure. Hey,
Okay.
George, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Say something else.
Something else.
Keep talking.
Oh, I'm never at a loss for words, but
We got you now.
put the pressure on me.
Okay, I'm ready. So we have Matt Barger, Joel Mulcahy, Nathaniel Monks, Brian McCaden, and Jim Carter present, along with George Custis attending via Zoom. So we have a quorum for the meeting, and notice was posted in accordance with Florida statute.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Paul sent out to the board members the minutes of the last board meeting. Have all the board members had a chance to look at the minutes?
We have.
Okay. I'd like to get a motion to approve those minutes.
So much to approve.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, we'll just jump into the agenda with a quick president's report. At the last meeting, it was mentioned that there'd been a series of vandalism and mail theft within Pelican Marsh. And on May 2nd, there was a theft prevention meeting and a presentation by the local police. It was shared that there is an ongoing investigation, so they really couldn't get into the details. However, these incidents are occurring within Pelican Marsh, as well as the USPS Postal Distribution Center. Chairman of the CDD, Bob Giannetti, indicated that the security systems at the gatehouses and the protocols they're working on enhancing and in order to help with this situation. However, we want to encourage the residents not to put outgoing mail, especially checks, in their mailboxes. As we receive additional updates from the CDD, we'll communicate to the community. I'm sure all of you by now, or most of you anyway, have seen the news reports of an incident occurring on the pickleball courts late, I believe it was on Saturday night. There were several young adults in their 20s, some residents, non-residents, were playing pickleball late night after hours. When a part-time employee asked them to leave and they refused, he went to his truck and came back wielding a machete to scare them off. Although no one was injured, the police were called, the individual was arrested. We've terminated this part-time employee. He has a no trespass order within the community. It's a very unfortunate situation. All of us wish it did not happen. But we've also had incidents in the evenings, late at nights, where the bathrooms by the pro shops have been trashed at night after hours. And in response to these incidents, we've made a decision to shut the lights down on the pickleball courts from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. to discourage these incidents from happening in the future. On a lighter note, we have received six applications and bios or resumes for the Design Review Committee, and we're in the process of reviewing these candidates. We'll be selecting and adding 4 new candidates to the DRC committee, and once these new committee members are selected, we're going to announce them and approve their addition to the next board meeting. At the last board meeting, we shared that the former chairman of the CDD had resigned and Bob Giannetti was voted in as chairman. Bob is a great guy if you know him. He's here in Pelican Marsh, and we're excited to work with him. And I'm happy to report that Bob has met with us since our last board meeting, and I'm pleased to report that the relationship and the communication between the CDD and Pelican Marsh is already greatly improved. Bob and the CDD are working with us on the redesign of the gatehouses, and as soon as we know more information from the CDD, we'll share that with the community. I want to thank Brian McAdam for all his hard work that he's put in over the last year and continuing over the last couple of months, moving the pickleball expansion project along. Brian and Paul also have coordinated a meeting with Bob Giannetti, myself, and Nathaniel Monks, as well as contractors to add approximately 14 additional parking spots across the street within the golf course and CDD property. This is all part of the long-term planning process, so we have additional parking to allow for additional future expansion to the community center and other amenities. So thank you, Brian, for leading both of these important initiatives. At the last board meeting, we had an extensive discussion with the board members and the community to approve the replacement of the roofs in the community center and the pro shop with new metal roofs. This roof project, followed by the resurfacing of the parking lot project, will happen sometime in July. We'll be communicating exact dates when these projects are scheduled. We also recently had a meeting with Courtside owner and manager Brad and Susan to work closely with them as the roof and parking lot projects take place. They were comfortable that the business would not materially be impacted and would have ample notice to the employees if and when we need to close for a day or so. We also had a discussion about collaborating with them on continuing music on Thursday nights during the summer and sharing in the cost to help drive sales at Courtside. I know we've all gotten used to the music on Thursdays, and we block out these fun nights on our calendar when we have more information and a plan around music on 30 nights throughout the summer. We're going to share this with the community as well. That's it for my president's report. I'll turn it over to Paul for the foundation manager's report.
Thanks, Joe. So summer certainly has arrived and many residents have now gone back to the northern habitats. Just a reminder that even though you're away, you're still required to maintain and clean your homes while you're gone. And it's also a good idea to have a home watch person or a friend lined up to monitor your home while you're away to prevent any unforeseen issues that may arise. Summer is also a time when we do our needed maintenance and other projects around the community center. And this summer we have a full schedule planned. As Joe mentioned, in a few weeks, we should be starting on the roof replacement. The permit has been applied for, and we're hoping about beginning of June, work will start on the roof replacement on the community center and the pro shop. The facility will remain open during the project. However, certain access points and entryways will be closed off. So we'll have signage out directing you to alternative access points during those times. And the goal is to have the new roofs on by mid-July. Because directly to follow that project, starting the week of July 22nd, will be the repaving of the parking lot. And when that's going on, we'll be sending out notices of where to park and how to access the community center during that project. So we have a busy summer scheduled with projects, so just be aware, and we'll keep you posted with emails as those projects come along. If you have not done so already, please make sure you have registered on the Pelican Marsh website and downloaded the Pelican Marsh app on your phone, because this is the best way we can stay connected with you and keep you updated on what's happening in Pelican Marsh over the summer. Lastly, as always, the staff appreciates everyone's support, and we look forward to some good summer and see you on next season. So that's my report.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And Nathaniel Monks, the treasurer's report.
Yes, normally we have our meetings about the third Thursday of every month, and I give you a long, detailed treasurer's report. But this month, due to this other situation, combining these two meetings so that we can move quicker with our options on pickleball, we're having our meeting a week early. And so the accountant and the finance committee has not had time to completely get together last month's financial. So it'll be done here soon. In fact, we're actually going to probably finalize it tomorrow afternoon at 2. And so we'll post that on the website, and then I'll go over it at the next monthly meeting in detail. What I do know from that report is that sales of homes has picked up a lot, and we were behind last month, and now we're ahead. Our budget for, and I'm reporting for the end of April, January, February, March, April, first 4 months. Our budget for the first 4 months, we had assumed we would sell 23 houses. There will be 23 houses in Pelican Marsh sale. We get $7,500 each time one of those houses sells. And that is, and I usually go over this in more detail, that is where two of our accounts get all their money from when houses sell. And this is important because in about 10 minutes, you'll be thinking about this again. We have a HOA a fee that you pay every year, and that goes into our operating account. And that's where the operating account, our day-to-day bills get paid out of, and that's where it gets all of its money. Most of all of its money. Now, when we sell houses, that $7,500 fee, that fully funds the other two accounts we have. We have a reserve account, and that's a replacement account, and it gets all of its money from houses that sell in that $3,500 fee. So your HOA fee never actually pays for any of the reserve account. Like we're getting ready to get a very expensive new roof on these buildings, and that's paid for by resale fees. That last account, which is going to be important here in a few minutes, for you at least to think about, sometimes it helps things be more understandable, is the capital account. The capital account is the account we spend money out of whenever we want to improve Pelican Marsh, improve the marsh amenities. So if we want to build something like a pickleball court or bocce or something like that, that money comes from the capital account. The capital account gets 100% of its funds from the resales. Whenever people buy houses like we did in Pelican Marsh and pay that $7,500 fee, which used to be $4,500, and now it's higher, but it's still booked in with inflation about the same percentage as the average house. That's where all those funds come from. So as we think about things today, you might remember that all those funds that we talk about spending are coming from the capital account, which gets all of its money from resale fees. The resale fees have been really good last month. We sold 36 houses in the first 4 months of the year, and 6 of them were people just simply moving around within Pelican Marsh, so we don't charge them another fee because they've already paid a fee. They're kind of grandfathered in. But 30 of them did pay the fee, and we'd only anticipated 23. And the previous month, we were behind. The first time in years, we were behind in sales, and now we're ahead in sales. So the budget looks good. We're actually, our income for these two accounts that I mentioned is above budget by $52,500 because sales have been good. Hope it keeps up going that way, and to a great degree, I suspect it will. So all the rest of the details for this report will be on the website, and I'll go over it with you next month on the third Thursday. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nathaniel. I'm going to move on to new business. I'm going to switch the order in the agenda and move to approve the Design and Review Committee written report. Do we have a motion to approve that report?
So approve. I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now moving on to the main item on the agenda and why I'm sure that most of you are here today. And I just want to thank all of you for your attendance, as this is a very important topic. But before I turn it over to Brian to take us through the presentation, I again want to thank him for not only his hard work, but the extent of the detail in the work in his presentation, the surveys that he conducted, the meetings held with Paul, all the board members. And you'll see by the presentation, there's been a lot of thought, discussion, collaboration by the board and many of you in the community. I also want to share that the board has received a handful of emails sent expressing opinions to the board on how people think we should be handling the decision of adding new pickleball courts. We've read all the emails, we've seen the comments on the pickleball Facebook page, and we're fully aware of the push for a particular agenda. I'm not going to speak for the other board members, as they each have their own thoughts, opinions, and decision-making processes. But I can assure you that this topic and discussion has not been handled lightly. We have all had an opportunity to think about this, listen to many residents in the community, to formulate our own thoughts and opinions and decisions. I wasn't living here permanently when Court 1 was taken and converted into the 4 existing pickleball courts. But I can tell you, I've heard all about the stories and the controversy and the tension that is inflicted on the community. So here we are again. But before today, but hopefully today, the tone of our discussion and the process we've gone through has been very open, transparent, thoughtful, without emotion. I know that no matter what we decide, we're not gonna make 100% of everyone in the community happy. It's a very difficult decision. However, our overarching goal was to provide additional pickleball courts while not negatively impacting amenities and the overall community in mind. I'm gonna ask that all of you, as I've asked my colleagues on the board, be respectful of each other, as each of you has the right to speak and be heard, but that doesn't mean that we may all agree. We're all residents, but we're also neighbors, and many of us are friends, and I'd like if we could all keep it that way. Following Brian's presentation, we will first open it up to the residents for questions and comments. Following that, we'll have each board member provide their own comments and move to approve a way forward. Thank you again for your attendance, and now I'll turn it over to you, Brian.
Very good. Thank you, Joe. Pull that out for me, Paul. Yep. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, as Joe mentioned, today we're. Okay. All set? Okay. So as Joe mentioned today, we wanted to give you an update on the work that's been done to expand pickleball here at Pelican Marsh. Go to the next slide, please. Looking at the agenda, we just like to review what the objective of the project is, take you through the timeline to date, share with you the criteria that was used at the various workshops we had with the foundation board. We'll go over the options that were submitted by the community. We'll talk about next steps and open it up for questions. So you may recall back in 2020, there was a community survey that listed adding additional pickleball courts as one of the top 5 asks from the community. Going back and looking at court usage, player data, national trends, they all support adding additional pickleball courts. The prior foundation board was active in considering an additional 2 to 3 pickleball courts at the time they transitioned. And the new foundation board supports adding additional pickleball courts to the community. If you go back and look at the timeline, it goes all the way back even before fall of 22. But at that time, my little laser, there we go, I can't really see it. At that time, the Pickleball Advisory Committee, which I was a member of at the time, requested the foundation board to explore options for adding additional pickleball courts. That spring, the foundation board actually started looking across the street as an option to add parking spots so we could add more pickleball courts and gym growth. And that, as Joe mentioned, is going to be important in terms of looking at long-term opportunities and planning. That summer, our parking consultant actually said, wait a second, we think we might have adequate parking for 2 to 3 courts based on what we currently have. And we made an appeal to Collier County regarding if our current parking lot was adequate for expansion. That took about 5 to 6 months. So in November of 2023, we got approval from Collier County to add up to 3 pickleball courts and 500 square feet of interior space. In February of this past year, I had the pleasure of presenting to all of you, presenting to the board, some ideas related to expanding pickleball. And we agreed at that time that maybe we didn't have all the ideas. And we took a step back, we took the time to solicit additional ideas from the community, which we've now received. In April, as we've been mentioning, Foundation Board held 3 individual workshops where we went through all 18 options associated with suggestions of how to add pickleball. And at times we got contractor and engineering input related to those options. And here we are today, discussion and hopefully a path forward. So it's important for everyone to understand when we sat down in those workshops, what do we define as important in making a decision? Does the decision fit within the parking lot constraints? Does it provide us with the ability to expand? What will the player and fan experience be? Does it minimize the impact to other amenities? What is the aesthetics of the option? How does it fit in with the look and feel of Pelican Marsh? What's the scheduling like? And I'll just pause here. Some of you may or may not be aware, but the pickleball courts are scheduled to be down this summer for 2 weeks for their 5-year maintenance, which is a resurfacing of the courts. So certainly if we're going to do something with the existing courts, we want to understand whether or not it makes sense to spend what amounts to about $25,000 on the existing courts. And what will the cost be? Will it require any type of special assessments? So those are all the factors and criteria as we sat down that we looked at as a board. So as I mentioned, we looked at many options back in February. I'm not going to go through the detailed slides I presented back in February, but we'll remind you of what those options were. So number one, there was a suggestion to take the existing pro shop, take it down, rebuild bathrooms, and extend pickleball courts to where the current pro shop is. There was a discussion, option two, to move pickleball towards the parking lot entrance. There was a suggestion to build a double-decker pickleball structure. There was a suggestion to add pickleball behind tennis court 7. I will pause again. So some of you may be aware that to do that option, as well as many of the other options you'll see, required a movement of the golf maintenance path, which the golf board has control over through an easement. The golf board has denied our request to move that maintenance path. So several of the options that involve moving that maintenance path are no longer on the table. Option 5 was to do something similar to option 4, but to have a long-term vision to switch the existing pickleball courts back to a tennis court and take over tennis court 7 and to make it pickleball, so we had 6 or 7 pickleball courts next to each other. Option 6 was to take tennis court 2 and make it a dual-purpose hard court for tennis and pickleball. 7, a temporary rollout surface over court 2 when there's peak demand pickleball times. Option 8 was to convert tennis court 8 and 9 to pickleball and court 1 to tennis. Option 9 was to build a new enclosed structure connected to the community center over the parking lot. So those are the 9 that we reviewed in detail, and they're available, what I reviewed previously in the appendix of this that everyone I'm sure will receive. So what's new? Since February, we received 9 additional submissions from the community. And I will go through these in great detail. The ones that we feel as if have stop signs because of the easement from the golf maintenance path, I won't spend as much time on. So they are option 10 to build an overhead structure in the front of the parking lot for 6 to 8 pickleball courts. Option 11, move the maintenance sheds that we have behind court 3 and swap court 3 to pickleball courts. Once again, we can't do that because of the maintenance path. Option 12, slide the existing pickleball courts over to next to court 2 and add 2 pickleball courts towards the parking lot. 13, slide the existing pickleball courts over next to court 2, but change the direction of the courts to allow for a 3rd court to be added by the bike rack. 14, move the bocce courts. Dino? Relax. Not on the table. Move the bocce courts behind court 7 and add a pickleball court where bocce resides. 15, convert court 2 to 4 pickleball courts. 16, purchase land to do a swap with the golf maintenance sheds that are across the street next to the CDD property and build a pickleball complex over across the street. Option 17, well, do this in phases. First phase, do option 12, build 2 pickleball courts. And then the second phase, look to expand additional pickleball courts towards the parking lot. Finally, 18, just add 3 pickleball courts behind court 7 and be done. So to look at them in a little more detail, and once again, the ones that I don't think are viable just based on the current environment, I will gloss over. Can I go to? Okay, and you may recall, this is the level of detail that we went through back in February, just giving pros and cons for each of the options. So build an overhead structure in the front of the parking lot, something that might look like this. Obviously increases your pickleball capacity, you convert pickleball courts back to a tennis court. All the pickleball courts will be together in one location with a common surface, and you don't have to worry about that $20,000 of court maintenance I mentioned before. Cons, we think this would be a very high cost. I know we've had concerns about the aesthetics of what that might look like and a very long development time. Next slide. Okay, this option, once again, I think has a stop sign because it requires moving the golf maintenance path. Certainly with something that would look to increase capacity, but I don't think it's something that we have an option to pursue at this time. You could see the location of where those courts would have been. Okay, option 12, sliding the existing pickleball courts over next to court 2. Here's court 2, the existing pickleball courts, move them over. Increasing our capacity to 6 courts with a new common surface that's consistent with play both within and outside Pelican Marsh, all courts together. A moderate cost that we'll go over later. It allows us for future expansion moving towards the parking lot with no loss of amenity, and you don't have to spend $20,000. The cons, we would have to look to enhance the waiting area because we would be taking the space of the current waiting area for pickleball, and the project would last about 3 months. Actually 3.5 months. Okay, option 13, this was sliding the pickleball courts over in the same manner, but changing the direction. I won't spend a lot of time on this. As tennis players and pickleball players know, courts are constructed north-south, not east-west, because you have a rising sun and a setting sun, and you're trying to avoid playing into the sun. Additionally, the configuration doesn't exist to have the benefit of a third court and laying the courts out this way. 14, once again, putting the bocce courts here, really not something that's feasible at this time. Okay, option 15 was to convert court 2 to 4 pickleball courts, increasing capacity by 4 courts at a moderate cost. All the pickleball courts would be together here and here, and the waiting area already exists. The cons, we would lose a tennis court. We would be limited in the number of tennis league matches you could hold on a given day, or hosting USTA Pro-Am events. And unless we resurface the pickleball courts, the existing ones, you would have different surfaces. Once again, is a very large project with a lot of effort behind it. This is looking to move the maintenance sheds that are across the street and basically relocating to land we repurchase and give to the golf community. Based on the difficulty in just moving the maintenance path, I think this is a long reach to be able to do, especially in a short time frame. Okay, option 17, phase 1, do option 12, which is we talked about moving and building 6 pickleball courts, moving them next to court 2, and then allowing us to build additional pickleball courts in the future towards the parking lot. This would increase our capacity, no loss of amenities, common surface within Pelican Marsh, all courts together. As you add phase 2, the costs would start getting a little bit higher. The cons, phase 2 would have a longer lead time, and you have to solve the riddle of additional parking. And that's where the work that Joe mentioned and looking at parking across the street comes into play. And once again, finally, option 18, adding 3 pickleball courts behind court 7. Okay, so this slide is meant to summarize the 18 different options. And when you look at the feedback from the workshops, you definitely come up with some common themes. First of all, the items in purple are impacted by the golf easement and not something we can move forward to at this time. The options in blue impact other amenities. mostly tennis, a couple of them bocce. The options in green have a relatively high cost and a long lead time. So the options in yellow had the most support based on our decision criteria from the majority of the board. And they result in some sort of solution working towards doing something at or near the parking lot. Next slide. That's okay. So I think before we turn it over to the community for questions, there were a couple things that we were, thought that you might ask, so we tried to put some FAQs together. Where can I play during construction? We are already working with the pro shop to find receptacles for summer play for pickleball. Of course, we have the public parks available to us as well. Will the surface be the same? The current, what's called a recreational surface, will be replaced with a more durable asphalt surface. That's much more common throughout Southwest Florida. Some of you may recall that we actually did a survey of about 40 communities in Southwest Florida, received responses from 20 of them, and more than half of them have an asphalt-based surface. Will there be a shaded waiting area? Any option will include either the existing waiting area or improved waiting experience with shade coverings, fans, tables, chairs, and different media. What if we need more pickleball courts based on the solution that we choose? Well, this is what we were talking about before about looking across the street. And I think when we met with the contractor across the street, Joe, I think we were looking at 16 spots to add across the street. If we're able to do that next year, that will allow us to add more pickleball or more bocce or more indoor space to the community center. So one way or the other, it's warranted for us to continue to look at that as an option. And I just want to repeat that this is something that the prior board had started working on and turned over to us. So as we look at next steps, hopefully we come out of this meeting with a recommendation. We'll have to go then, depending on the cost level, to a proxy vote. If we want to do something before next season, get something done this summer, we'll have to expedite that proxy vote and get it out ASAP. And as I mentioned, we will continue to work on that long-term parking solution.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. Excellent presentation. Paul. Before we turn it over to the residents for comments and questions, can you check and see if Uwe, he texted me, see if we can hear him?
I don't see him on. Here, let me see.
He said he's on Zoom.
He may have logged in as an attendee.
Yeah.
Find him now.
Thank you all for your patience.
Uwe, can you hear us?
He's muted. Uwe, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Uwe, were you able to hear the presentation Brian presented?
I've been there from the start. I just wasn't able to, you weren't able to hear me.
Okay, good. We just didn't want to have to start over.
Slide one.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and turn it over to the residents. If anybody has any questions, I would ask you to come up to the microphone so the people that are on Zoom can hear. And raise your hand if you'd like to come up and state your name and your community. Okay, okay, go ahead.
My name is Paul Markarian from the Seville.
Bring the microphone closer. Bring the mic, please.
I am Paul Markarian from the Citadel. Have architectural renderings been done so that the community can see what the visual impact of this is rather than just a flat plan? I mean, because this is a major project. And I think it's hard for people to judge what the visual impact will be to our.
Brian,
area.
you want to answer that question? I mean,
It all
in terms of
depends
what
on
we
what
do.
option is selected and what we move forward on. Certainly, some of the options related to expansion towards a parking lot. Paul, if you can go to the last slide into the appendix.
Okay.
It's the long appendix.
Okay. Oh, last slide.
In terms of the option of looking to expand towards court two and then into the parking lot, what this would involve is the courts that you see on the left. On the top right, the shrubs around that large tree would be removed with additional, was it 900 square feet of papers? The tree would stay, and then as you look at the rendering, if you can picture, scroll down just a little, please. The rendering on the bottom right, if you could picture this now facing the courts, we are looking to add a canopy similar to what's near the tennis court with tables under the canopy, additional tables under the tree, benches along the lining of the pickleball courts, and then with the media mounted on the pro shop. The bike racks would move to the other side of the pro shop and would have a paver path connecting it to the existing paver path.
So the waiting area would be more crowded, but I was also wondering, as you come into the parking lot, what would you see? You'd see a pickleball court right up against the.
You would still see the sidewalk. The sidewalk doesn't change. There's about 30 feet of sidewalk that the bow of it has to move towards the parking lot. But under this option, the curb line doesn't change at all. So you still continue to have the curb, a 5-foot parking lot, and then you would have the fencing of the pickleball courts.
And the height of the pickleball courts fencing is the same as the tennis courts?
We got
Shorter?
quotes, no, actually, currently it's the same. We asked in our quotes for this particular option to make the two fences, the one fence facing the parking lot and the one fence facing court two to go up an extra 2 feet. So there would be 12-foot fence to prevent balls from going out into the parking lot. We probably then would have some kind of tarp similar to what's on the existing tennis and pickleball courts in terms of tarp blocking material.
And has any consideration been given to the volume of noise that we would experience both on the tennis courts and in the eating area of the restaurant? I mean, I know
I wouldn't
I play
anticipate
bocce in
any
another
changes, yeah.
community with a lot of pickleball courts and if the courts are fully used, it's quite loud.
I wouldn't anticipate it being much more than it is today.
Okay.
I mean, they would be in the same general location, so I don't think they would impact the restaurant at all. I don't think they would impact this side, the south side of the campus at all. The only thing they would possibly impact would be court two. If it continues to be used as a training court, I don't think the impact on play would be that great.
If this is chosen, is it possible for the community to have 3D drawings so that we can make a choice or see it? Less abstract.
Oh, move closer to.
I said, if this choice is selected, will the community have a chance to have 3D architectural drawings so that they can make a more informed decision?
It's all a question of expense, that probably would add an additional $25,000 to $30,000 to the expense of the project, getting a civil engineer involved to do that design work.
That much?
We've asked.
Even with AI? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Margie Mintz from Troon Lakes. You know, on one of the slides, it showed financial was too expensive or this wouldn't work. Is this one of the slides that the board recommends? Is this one of the options that the board recommends?
Is one of the options that I displayed in yellow as
Right.
being most board members in favor of moving forward with this option.
Right, and, okay, which I think is great. What's the downside? What are the negatives?
The largest negative is that we'll be recreating the waiting area associated with pickleball. As you see in the lower right, you know, some of this already exists in terms of pavers and so forth, but we're going to basically expand the pavers underneath the tree, as you see on the top right,
Right,
to make a larger waiting area. And then we're going to construct a new awning or tent, similar to what's over tennis. That's the biggest additional expense.
wow. So what do you anticipate the cost of this to be approximately?
The cost of just doing the court work is about $340,000. The cost of doing the additional work for the waiting area is, I think we said around 50, 60. Yeah.
So like for 400-ish.
Yeah, if we move forward with this option, we're probably gonna ask for a tad more than that, just to give us a little bit of a buffer, but that's the general cost.
So this would have to go out for a vote.
Yes.
Every
absolutely.
option would probably have to go out for a vote.
Yes, no cheap answers.
There's wrestling mats, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Arthur?
Yeah, or just go around the room.
Thank you, Brian, for the presentation.
I'll ask her.
Arthur Goldstein, Claremont, been a resident here for 20 years.
The microphone, Art, closer.
Oh, sorry, Arthur Goldstein, Claremont, I've been a resident for 20 years. And I've seen the changes and the improvements. The one question I have, we're not taking away an amenity like bocce or tennis to do this particular project.
Yeah, going back to the summary, you know, we identified those suggestions that took away an amenity. And once again, we haven't had a chance to make a recommendation as a board, but the general feedback from the workshops is that not something that the board would support.
I would say, based on the limited space we have. Also, I'd like everybody to notice something. This room is being used for a meeting, and we have people out there, out in the street, I call it, playing cards and mahjong or whatever. So I think the board should really take a look at the overall needs and come up with a budget. I don't care how much money it costs, because we want this place to compete with other communities. This building is already outdated. When I first came here, this was just a shack with exercise equipment. I think Matt and Jim were here. So the building went up and it was fine, and now it's outrun its usefulness. The loss of the tennis court, by the way, there was a great deal of dissension in the community, and I kind of blame, you know, the leadership for that, because the leadership didn't appropriately present things. And I just want to say that this is a much more better way than what was done before, whatever you choose. I also would recommend not worrying about time and money, because, excuse me, because you're worried about an assessment of $100, you know, come on. Because you want to do what's right. So you don't turn around another board 5 years from now and say, you know, they didn't do right. So I would suggest that you take a look at the long term, not worry about the timeline where we have to build something in 2 months or 3 months or 6 months. If it takes a year to do, you do it. You do it over a year, and then it's done right. The plan seems reasonable, and that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Art.
Thank you.
I'm gonna be fast, okay?
Promise.
Promise. My name is Beth D. Frank and I live in Claremont. And first of all, I want to thank you, Joe, for your opening statements. And Brian, your presentation was excellent. All I want to say is I lived here through the last one. I would want everybody in this room to please act like adults and civilized people, and let's try to work this out, okay? Just because I play tennis does not mean I am against pickleball, but some people have started a war here by posting things on Facebook and other social media. So please, let us work together, and I'm sure we can find a solution to this problem.
Thank you, thank you.
Hi, Chuck Sullivan from Ventura. I want to echo the last statement. I think one of the things that we love about Pelican Marsh is it's a full package. So when people come into the community, they see all of the amenities, the tennis, the bocce, the pickleball. And it's a wonderful community and we love it. And in looking at the different options, a couple of things struck me. One, we know pickleball is not going away, it's gonna continue to grow. So ideally, we would identify a long-term solution that would accommodate all of the courts that we want, so that we don't have to do this piecemeal, a little 2 courts here, 2 courts in 3 years, because that won't end up in a good spot. Much better, as the gentleman said two speakers ago, to think about the comprehensive plan. I think secondly, one of the biggest amenities that I have seen with our pickleball courts is the waiting area. And it's not just a waiting area, it's a socialization area, it's a viewing area. And I think identifying a plan that accommodates that and doesn't diminish it would be good. And I know the team's working on doing that. And then finally, cost. And I know it's difficult to understand what the cost is, but if some options require moving lights, for instance, and getting FP&L to sign off, which can take forever and a day, and other options don't, I think that kind of plus and minus are things that we should consider. I think the options that you presented are very well thought out. I think the idea of requiring more parking across the street, just based on our discussions or the discussions of the former board and you guys with the golf club, seem to be not a solution that's going to be short term. So I would encourage you to look at those that would allow us to have the whole community come together. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Leanne Stevens from Claremont. And I would like to echo what everyone has said, thanking you all. And Brian, I know how many hours you put into that, and we appreciate the clarity to make these decisions. And I know this is a difficult decision, and I know that many of you have expressed the opinion that we have acknowledged that we got to expand pickleball, because that's where the trend is going, so I appreciate that. I have 2 things. One is that our teams played at a facility this last week that had a similar setup to what you're proposing, with the waiting area now being where the bathrooms are. And with the courts, they have the courts here and then another set of courts back there. And I will tell you that several people in that community, the courts were being fully used when we were there, and they did not like that. Makes it very difficult for viewing. You have to stand in an empty court to watch the far courts, and the courts weren't always empty, so you really couldn't watch it. So from that standpoint, and given the fact that we have 8 leagues, 8 teams, you know, at any one time here, that is a thing, and this community is great about coming out and supporting and cheering. So I think we don't want to lose that. I agree with Chuck that the waiting area is a really important part of pickleball. It's I can't tell you how wonderful that community is in making friends and getting together. So that's a thing. I think that I don't know the answer to that, given our limitations of space, but I really think that's an important consideration that maybe we're not looking at quite enough yet. The other thing is that the question was asked about option, I hope I got my numbers right, option 12, which is to move put two courts in the parking lot. And the question was asked about the cost of that and 400 and some thousand, and a 3.5 month time off in which pickleball players would have no place to play pickleball other than to leave the community. That's a long time to have to leave the community, and I don't think any, you know, I know you all who are tennis players would not like that, and I'm sure that's a thing.
Don't start picking.
Okay, but anyway, please let me speak. Please let me speak. I think 3.5 months is a long time to ask us to go somewhere else to play. I'm just saying that I think that is a con for that. What I did not hear is what would be the cost of option 15? What I think that the community needs to hear so that they can make an educated comparison. What would be the cost of option 15 and what would be the downtime? And that's the option where court 2 is converted into pickleball courts. So that's my question. Do you know the cost and time?
I can probably help with that. There's a net cost and a gross cost, kind of like if you go to the dealership and you trade in your nearly new car to buy another car, and the salesman said, this is only gonna cost you $10,000 for this brand new car, but you gotta trade in your other almost new car. So there is a cost involved more than just the cost. If we were to take tennis court number 2 and destroy it and no longer have a tennis court there, that's a cost. And top of that, there'd be another 200 to 225,000. So it's almost as expensive as adding without subtracting.
That doesn't totally answer my question, but what I hear you saying is that it would cost 200 to 225,000 to convert court 2.
Yes,
That's what you're saying?
yes.
And what is the timeline for that?
It takes them about, when we spoke with the contractors that built tennis courts, I came away believing that this year they have enough time to do one more job if we move quickly enough, and they could do one more job somewhere in the ballpark of 3.5 months.
So to convert court 2 would would take 3.5 months?
We don't know. It might even take a little bit less than that.
I think it'd be less than that, yeah.
I think it would be less than that too, and I think that the community, if we don't have the answer to that, to how much it would cost and the time, I think that's a thing that has to be considered. And the other thing that I will say, since, obviously this is a really hot topic and sore subject. One court, with tennis players on it from 8 o'clock till 12:30, which is, the prime time that everybody likes to play pickleball, tennis, whatever. That's 12 people using that court. That same court made into pickleball courts would allow 48 to 54 people to play, depending on whether it was round robins or whether it was just, reserving the courts. So that's a lot more people impacted in that way. And if the tennis players would play at 6:30 or at 12:30 to 2, and I'm talking about during season, because that's when it matters during season. It doesn't matter so much now. During that time.
We have a lot of people that probably want to come up and
Okay.
speak, so
Yeah, and,
we're gonna need to move on.
okay, but the fact is that would more than create spots for those 12 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a point of clarity, because I hear the same common theme, so, under the one option that we're sliding the courts over next to court 2, as I mentioned before, we are not touching the curb line of the parking lot. You will have 6 courts without, going into the parking lot.
Right.
What we were suggesting is that for future expansion, adding the parking spots across the street will allow us the capability to add 2 more courts towards the parking lot.
Go from 6 to 8.
As a longer term plan. I just want to reiterate also under that plan that the waiting area will actually end up being double the size of what it currently is. I mentioned that we're looking to add an additional 900 square feet of pavers to the head of the courts. And I'm sure many pickleball players can appreciate the fact that, several communities like Great Hawk, Quail West, Vineyard, Seasons, Bonita, all have their entrances and waiting areas at the head of their pickleball courts. And some may argue the sight lines are better or worse.
And we'll still have shade at the new waiting area?
Yeah, that include a new canopy with fans, yeah.
Right. Thanks, Ray. Yes, sir.
My name is Stephen Barbario, Les Chateau. Bottom line, have you chosen an option that you're going to run with?
I think the purpose of this meeting is for each board member to express what their opinions are. We have not had a board meeting where we have discussed this.
Are you going to make a choice today as to what option you're gonna follow?
At the end of all the comments, we're gonna, as I said at the beginning, we're gonna take all the information from the community, and then each board member is gonna have an opportunity to make a comment.
Okay? $400,000 to do the option that you talked about. I'm not gonna make a judgment as to what option's good or bad, because I don't play either of them. My wife and I use the gym, okay? And other things that go on in this community center. Where's the money coming from? You've got a parking lot that's gotta be paved. You have a new roof that has to be put on the building, and I don't care what balance it comes out of. You have massive increases in insurance rates, not just here, but for all of us and all of the sub-communities within here. So where do you expect to take $400,000 from? When we built what was then called the Nest, no assessment was made to anybody in this neighborhood. It was done from monies in accounts and several accounts, because obviously there was money set aside to support the,
Can I answer your question?
yeah,
I'm the
sure.
treasurer. When we built the restaurant, we built it out of the capital fund. And you may remember earlier, I mentioned the capital fund is for improving amenities. And it gets all of its money from the resale fee.
Right.
And that's why there's no assessment been mentioned or anything like that. And once again, so all of that came out of the capital account. And once again, whatever, if the board at the end of this meeting votes to move forward, we will probably vote, I suspect we will vote to spend money out of the capital account, which comes from resale fees.
Okay, as long as I understand that it's coming from the capital account, that means no assessment per door.
We are not considering assessment that I have not ever heard of any option in that one yet.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, I'm Cindy De La Rosa, Ravenna. First of all, I want to say thank you. This is a thankless job. I also want to remind people that 4 years ago, no one was cursed at, spit at, more than I was. So no one should go through that, and I never want to see that again. So I just want to put that out there. I would never want anyone to think that that was me. What I would like to suggest is we have a vote. You know which one you want. And I think you know which one probably a lot of pickle players want. Put it out there, put the cost. Say, this is what this is gonna cost, this is what this is gonna cost. Let the community vote, not just tennis players, pickleball players, bocce players. Let the community vote what they want. You know what? You throw your hands up and just say, hey, listen, this is what it came back. This is what it is. I'm on the board, don't beat me up. So I think that it's as much as it sounds easy, it actually is easy. Because everyone is so heated. Everyone knows what they want. Look, you know what you want. You have family members. You play tennis. You know, here you are. You're gonna have your friends say to you, no, you have to stick up for me. No, you have to stick up for me. No, you represent Pelican Marsh residents. Put a vote out. This is one, this is what it costs, this is the other. You know what the two are. Just put those two out. Send it out, comes back in, and then there you go. So that's what I would suggest, because I'll tell you, it's gonna get, you think the yelling from the back, I'm gonna tell you right now. No one was cursed at more than I was. I was the lady from New Jersey. People didn't even know what my name was. You don't want that. Believe me. I'm in Northern New Jersey. You've got figured that one out. But thank you. I thank you so much. This is not an easy job. I thank you. I appreciate everything you do. You know, I'm on the board of Ravenna. You know, Tanya's in the back. We've had this. So on behalf of everyone here, we'll be good. We'll live. We can coexist. But my recommendation is that you do put it out for a vote. Thank you.
I hope you run for the board next cycle. All right, my name is Rich Fetterman from Muirfield. I've been here 22 years. There've been so many things that have been contentious. I remember even building this community center, that was a whole big deal, right, Matt? Whether we have a pool, not have a pool. There was arguments over the cable committee, what kind of cable should we get, and that was contentious, but every single time, you guys figured it out. People calmed down, lowered their nerves, lowered the temperature. This board is incredibly competent. Tremendous, Brian, great presentation once again. I love the color coding, otherwise I couldn't figure it out. And Joe, your leadership is exemplary. Keeping people together. You have a collaborative process in place. That's critical. I urge the board to take their time on this. Don't rush anything through. If you do something short-term, it should be consistent with the longer-term plan. You don't want to spend money, then break it up, and then, oh, we gotta do this now. Really, really important. So I believe in the board. I believe you'll make the right decision. Even though I'm a tennis player, primarily, I have that faith. And I think everyone in the community just needs a little faith. These guys will figure it out. That's why they get the big bucks. Thank you. One other comment, though, you said as your mission statement of this, you don't want to degrade facilities from some other part. So that's it. We're gonna be additive, not add and subtract. If you stick to that vision and realize that's the way to go, the solutions will present themselves. One other thing on doing any votes, if you're lucky, you'll get 20% of the community to respond. So that won't necessarily be representative. It'll be representative of the people who really want to vote, as opposed to what the entire community really wants. So keep doing what you're doing. All right, and we support you. Great job, guys.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. Scott Stone, I live in Tiburon. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm also the treasurer of an HOA back north in my summer home in Connecticut. I agree that we should not be spitting and cursing people from New Jersey, although gentle mocking, I think, is generally on our agenda. As a treasurer, one of the things that I've realized is that it's a lot easier to get through the money part of the discussion by quoting it not just in terms of $500,000 or $400,000, but what it is per household. If you divide 400,000 by approximately 1,950, which is the number of keys that are in this residence, that's about $205. I would encourage everybody to keep that perspective, okay? Because we live in a community where the average house price is now over $1 million. Our property taxes are in excess of $6,000, even $8,000 a year. You're paying over $600 a month in HOAs and other fees. And we're talking and fighting about money on a $205 one-time assessment. And we're not even talking about that because it's coming out of the capital fund. So I would encourage everybody when you talk about the money to keep that in perspective, that these solutions are essentially a rounding error in your budget for living in $1 million home in Pelican Marsh. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're next, Steve.
I'm not Steve.
Steve's after you.
Okay, no problem. Joe Donzelli, thanks for it. Appreciate everything you guys have done. We moved in December. So I'm fairly new to Pelican Marsh and we do love all the amenities. I am a pickleballer and my wife's a pickleballer, so I love pickleball. But what I don't like is pickleball noise necessarily. And so we happen to be in Claremont. We are the most approachable location to the facility. And I just want a promise from the board that as we move to expand pickleball, that we consider sound abatement when we're considering all options. We're going to see growth. We're going to see expansion of pickleball, and it's noisy. And a gentleman mentioned it earlier as far as at the dining facilities. I know friends of mine have been in communities where abatement had to go as far as actually shutting down pickleball use at certain times because of the noise. I don't want to get it to that point. And so I want to, I know you guys are considering things like this going forward, but also once whatever decision is made, that we revisit the sound abatement component, and whether or not shrubs can do it, I doubt it, but certainly shrubs are gonna have a role as well. So, thank you.
Yeah, there's some nice sound canvas, barriers available that, we certainly could look into the design. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Steve?
Steve Burke, Muirfield. So I'd like to just start by saying that I am pretty thrilled with the way this whole thing is developed. As a recent ex-board guy, I am very, very pleased with the direction that things have gone with the CDD. I think the new CDD leadership is going to make everybody's life on this board easier. Everybody in this community, I think this is boding very well for the immediate future and the long-term future. And I congratulate you guys on continuing to foster a tight relationship with them. That they are important to us. And I don't think that by and large in the community, people really, excuse me, appreciate how important now that we have this improved relationship with them. I expect that we're all going to benefit from that. So thank you. I'm also very happy to hear that there are continued plans and development for some parking expansion across the street, which is obviously part and parcel of that relationship with the CDD and the new leadership at the golf club. There's a new general manager at the golf club, and both those entities are very, very important to Pelican Marsh. We always thought about it as a three-legged stool, and I'm pleased that this board is moving in a healthy direction vis-a-vis the continued relationship with the golf club and the CDD, because any parking that we can establish over there, be it employee parking or whatever, is going to have a positive effect on future infrastructure development at Pelican Marsh. Thank you for your work in this area as well. With regard to this item at hand, which is pickleball expansion. All of you know that the board has been for some time dedicated to this idea. The board has as its great responsibility the welfare of the entire community to consider when making decisions of this kind. There's not just the cost, but there's the impact on the community at large. We have a tiny little campus here. Any changes are going to end up being big changes. I am impressed by the depth and breadth of the study that has been done to develop these options. This is an extremely difficult issue. There are all kinds of obstacles to getting this done at the county level, at the local level, even at the community level. And so I think you guys have really prepared an excellent smorgasbord of items for us to look at. It does seem to me that this is going to come down to the option of putting a couple of pickleball courts as a first step next to the current pickleball courts, with the option of expanding later, depending on the development of further future parking off-site, versus the taking of court 2. And I believe that given our history as a community, everyone has, there are factions, we all belong to them, within the community. People who are primarily tennis players, people who are primarily pickleball players, people who, the vast majority of whom live here and have no idea about all this drama or care about it. So, having said that, I think that it is important for us, as a couple of the speakers said, to remember that our recent past, where things got unhealthy, and to avoid that moving forward. Reasoned discussions on pros and cons of various ideas are welcome. And I know that we will all strive to keep the emotion down, even though we very badly want certain things. There are realities in this world that we must pay attention to. So having said that, I do think that this idea of developing a couple of pickleball courts next to the current courts with the option of developing more later is a reasonable one. I think that taking away any part of an amenity is a potentially divisive and very difficult thing to do to the community as a whole. I know that there are good arguments on both sides, and I've heard many of them. And I hope that as we move forward with this, you guys will keep in mind that you're making this decision for the entire community, not just a few hundred people who like one kind of ball versus another kind of ball. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
I'm Brett Smith from Ariel. I just want to say that one of the amenities that I think we need to really bear in mind is parking close to the community center. I would hope that in moving all our spaces around, that we don't lose access to the community center and have to wind up parking across the street or over in Tiburon or, you know, someplace far away. So I hope that we can keep the parking for community center activities adjacent to the community center.
Thank you.
I'm Rich Benson. I live in Portofino. A lot of really good stuff's been said, so I can just say something real shortly. You guys have a great responsibility. You have the responsibility of making this community better. What is the community? The community are people who chose to buy a house here. They chose to buy a house here for the conditions that they saw when they came. They may have wished for more of this, more of that, a swimming pool, more bocce, whatever. And it's your job to see if you can do that, but not to do that in a way that is detrimental to the conditions that exist when they made their decision. So please look at this. Sometimes a good decision is to not make a decision now, but to figure out the best decision that is best for everybody.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you, Rich.
Back. Jerry Carbone, Montclair. Nice job, guys. I think the one thing that's evident that you could use 4 more pickleball courts. Is that true or not? How much money is in the capital account today?
Well, sadly, I have to wait another week till I get the.
Forget that. Give me a current.
About 425.
4 1/4.
4 1/4. Okay, very good. If you went and just did 2 more courts, you're gonna spend how much?
4 1/4.
4 1/4, okay? If you added the other 2 courts and did the whole thing at one time, because you're gonna have this meeting again in another year if you have to go back for another 2 courts. Well,
It sounds good on the surface. It does sound good on the surface. In fact, another fine gentleman recommended earlier, just do it all at once. Unfortunately, if the board went with the option of adding 2 and then really like the option of adding 2 more and involved with the parking, what have you, there's several things that have to happen in the meantime, in a sequential order. And one of those is budget, but also we have to wait on CDD to do something, and then we have to wait for contractors, and several steps have to take place. And it would leave the pickleball players with only 4 courts for another couple of years, and we felt like that maybe that's something to weigh into our options also.
And Jerry, to be fully, transparent, the additional parking spots across the street, we have a plan that we could reutilize the temporary road that's being built by the CDD for the emergency access for the Route 41 gate. The limestone that they need for that, they are willing to donate to us to help build the parking lot. When they're finished. When they're finished. Good. That will save us $20,000 to $25,000 on that project. So we're trying to stage it in such a way that we take advantage of that. But until we get additional parking spots, we can't just add 4 pickleball courts.
And one of the things, Jerry, that you should completely understand is that when we got approval from the county, we got approval for 3 pickleball courts and 500 square feet of gross leasable area within our community.
All right, but then I would suggest this, if you're gonna do the site plan for this expansion, include the area where the future 2 courts would be. Get all of that work done, include that in the current budget. Because then when you get the facility across the street with your additional parking, all you have to do is build the 2 courts and put the fences up. You don't have to disturb the lot, because in going over, you're gonna have to create a new entrance coming in, etc. So do all of that up front. The fact that it's gonna cost you another $100,000 that you're not gonna use, you're all worried about money. This building was built without an assessment. Okay? Everybody seems to understand that you're gonna take the resale fees, okay? And by the way, they get distributed to 3 areas: operating, capital, and reserves, not 2. Okay? How you use them is another story. But the other side of the coin is that you can go out, if you got any deficiency in dollars, you can go out and borrow dollars. And go back to the documents again. If you borrow dollars, the first thing that you have to do with the resale fees is you have to pay off the loan. We paid off $1 million here in a little over 2 years. And that was at $3,000 a pop, without all 1,900 units being available. So don't be short-sighted to put yourself into a position that you're gonna come back here in another 1.5 years, all right? Taking a look at the cost that you're talking about right now, what did it cost us to do these in number 1? It's a little over $100,000, am I correct? Without all the other stuff that was thrown in, now you're talking $300,000. Those costs are just gonna go up. Have the whole plan in effect, all right? Push the envelope across the street with the parking, and you'll be able to resolve the issue a lot sooner, but get some of it done now. And don't worry about an assessment. Everybody's getting scared about getting an assessment. There won't be an assessment. You got enough money coming in. Okay, you might not have to be able to repaint everything, sooner or put new carpet down every other week, but you got the money and you got the ability to pay for any debt. Do it.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you. Certainly want to give an opportunity for everybody to speak. Do they want to speak? If there's anything new, raise your hand.
There's some questions online, Joe.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. There seems to be 4 questions online. Is that true?
Was this you, Bay, asking about being connected? We had an earlier question about, what's the board's policy on reporting crimes committed in the local marsh? First question that came in earlier was, what's the board's policy on reporting crimes committed in Pelican Marsh? We really don't have a written policy in place. Obviously, it's something urgent that, like the issue with milk fraud, we send an email blast out to the community warning them of the situation.
Thank you.
Last question that came in was, will the community vote on the pickleball options? And I guess the only vote on approving the money to spend to build the pickleball course, which is required by the documents.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. Since we've heard from the community, I think it's a time for us to go around the horn and get comments from each one of the board members. And I'd like to start with Uwe Roper. Uwe, can you hear us?
You're muted, Uwe.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for giving me the chance to be the first one in line here. I really appreciate the input from the community and many of you that have taken the time to comment. The engagement on this has been great. Clearly, there's a need. I think everybody can see we need more pickleball courts, and utilization is very high in season. We could certainly use more courts. I heard the comments that were made about waiting. Um, I think the pressure is there to act on getting at least a couple of courts into place for the pickleball community. I really see there's a lot of need. Um, to make this happen, we have to go to the community for a vote. And I'm very much hoping that you, the residents, will support that action. No, we do not need an assessment. I think that came out loud and clear, and I think a lot of people were pleased to hear that. But we still need a community vote to support the expenditure. So I hope you'll be there for us. Some residents rightly ask, why should we spend this money? And it's a good question. My answer is this. It will attract buyers to the community, and it will directly support property values. So even if you never use the facilities, you will benefit ultimately on the sale of your property. If you need evidence, just look at the new active communities being built. Developers would not spend their money building sports facilities if they didn't get a payback on selling homes. Brian, you did a great presentation, and there were a lot of options. But I think in the end, the option that we choose has to meet three criteria. It has to increase pickleball capacity. In my mind, it can not take away tennis facilities for the peace in the community. And it has to be a reasonable cost to the community and to the residents, which I think the no assess him discussion has put to bed. Unfortunately, we have such an option, and I hope that everybody will get behind that option, whether or not you play pickleball, tennis, or whether you don't use the facilities at all. Just a quick comment on the Court 2, which came up a couple of times. In my view, Court 2 is not an option, and I don't even want to give it out to vote to the community. It is going to be highly divisive. We don't need this in this community. It's not the cheapest option when we add in the cost of losing a highly utilized asset, which is Tennis Court 2. It is really divisive to our social fabric. And I think it will be hard to get a yes vote from the community when there'll be a real split among those people that don't want to spend money, those people that want to play tennis, and those people that want pickleball. So most of all, we don't need to go with that option. We have other good options. So those are my 2 cents, Joe, and thanks.
Thank you, Uwe. George Custis, are you online?
I am. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, as usual, I have to say I agree with Uwe. I usually follow him and in the order. But I think what's most important here, first of all, thanks Brian and Paul for the hard work. I mean, really, so much time has been spent. A lot of thought is put into this. And I do want to thank the community for your letters and your words. Before I left back to come back north, I spoke with a lot of people about this subject. And I hear everybody, I understand what everybody's saying. I'm happy we have an option where we can add 2 more pickleball courts. That's a 50% increase without taking away a tennis court and also leaving an option for additional courts should they be necessary. And I think, some people may disagree, but I think we may find the 50% increase is enough for a considerable amount of time, if not forever. So yeah, I agree with that option. And again, I'm thankful we were able to come to that. And that's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, George. Matt?
One of the things I think that the entire board did agree upon, because we've had some back and forth and everything else, was we are not going to subtract to add. So to Uwe's point and a few people in the community, we are going to look at options for pickleball within the 5.4 acres that we have in our community. I don't think that anybody should really think that that's a bad thing at all, because taking away court 2, which is not only a teaching court, it is taking away an amenity that has been here for a very long time, and we have the opportunity to expand within our 5.4 acres to make it better. Another thing is I'm a little concerned about a couple of the options that we have with pickleball. I think one of the things that a lot of people really enjoy who play both sports, not only tennis, but pickleball, is that we have the blue sails on, where we have the, it's kind of like a respite area, and where a lot of the pickleballers sit and play and enjoy their time just between sets. So I think that's something that we should all look at. I'm a little concerned overall about what the cost is really going to be. So about 6 years ago, when we built pickleball courts on a graded surface. We took out court 1 and it was on grade, and it was $180,000, and it took about 3 months to build. So those 2 items to me are a little disconcerting when I hear the numbers, when I think, okay, it's 6 years later and it's going to be only 50% more, and we're gonna do 3 courts, and we're gonna do demo, and we're building over a sewer line, and we don't know exactly where the water line or the gas line is. So there's a lot of questions in where I'm sitting today that I really don't think that we've done a hell of a job, and I'm not kidding. We have done a hell of a job of narrowing down the opportunity and where we would love to see the courts. But I think there's a little bit more work that needs to be done by the board before we rush into a situation. And I just want to say, looking back, a lot of people don't realize how much work went into what we did for bocce, what we did for the restaurant, and a lot of people don't realize how much we've already done on the front end for pickleball. We're here for you guys. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Mayor. Jim?
I've been through a number of these discussions in my time in Pelican Marsh. Probably 15 years ago, you would have been talking about pickleball, you've been talking about tennis. How can we build more tennis courts? 15 years from now, will you be talking about building pickleball courts? I have no idea. So this is situational. It is a time when there's a sport there's a big demand for. I think the process this board has gone through is outstanding. Joe's leadership and the methodology that Brian put together. We as a board had every opportunity to sit and talk about all these options and what are the best options, what will work the best. There's no perfect solution to this, but there is one that is emerging that seems to fill the need for pickleball now and potentially in the future. But also keep in mind that less than a mile from here, in another year, there's going to be a major pickleball complex. So we're trying to accommodate our players within Pelican Marsh, and we're trying to do it in a way so we don't take away another amenity. And when I came back on the board, I promised myself I won't take away. I will always do the best to preserve and add to. And the other thing, remember, about 65% of the people in Pelican Marsh, they don't play any of these sports. They may come in here and use the fitness center, they may play bocce. Some of them don't do anything, but why are they here? It's called location, location, location. It is the best location in Naples. you get to Southwest Regional, downtown, anywhere. So in a global picture, looking at this, I think we need to look as an emerging option that'll be discussed here shortly, the one that could meet the needs of this community. However, that choice will be yours. You're going to have to vote on it because anything over $250,000 goes to the community to vote. It's your decision. Everybody says, well, you guys got to make the decision. No, our job, and through Brian's efforts and what he did, we brought to you what we think is probably the best option to meet the needs of what's going on today. So Brian, thank you. Joe, thank you for the leadership. Thank everybody on the board for all the effort they put in.
Thank you, Jim. Ryan?
So just a couple of points of clarification, just so everyone's on the same page. We have talked to our engineers. We have talked to our contractor and received a firm quote related to this project. There are 2 drains that are currently near the pickleball courts that will be able to be capped based on changing the flow of how the courts, new courts would drain. There is no sewer line in that general area that we'll be touching. There is a water line that we have to contemplate. It's an 1.5 inch water line coming into the community center that we'll have to make a decision if we want to move or not. And that's part of the contingency that we built in the overall pricing. But I guess time will tell if we discover anything else. You know, a lot of people mentioned 3 months of downtime for a project. You know, I look at it as, you know, the courts being down for 3 months, and then we have utilization of, you know, 6 new courts for, you know, the next 5-10 years. So I think it's a smaller sacrifice. When I started this journey about 18 months ago, working with Steve, you know, the goal was to add 2, maybe 3 pickleball courts. In a perfect world, and I've expressed this in my candidate forum, I expressed this to my colleagues in our workshops and through emails, I would like to see a couple options put in front of the community. I don't think that's going to happen at this time based on the current environment we're in. However, I think that the option that we're discussing addresses is the best option to deliver courts now. And the need we have now, when you look at the utilization rates, we have tremendous demand on our courts. The courts are wearing much faster than anticipated by the contractor. They've told us that based on our usage, we should be doing maintenance every 4 years, not every 5 years, and so on. And I feel as if looking at the opportunity to expand further, whether it be next year, the year after, in a staged approach in a long-term plan where we're adding parking across the street first, so we can add either additional pickleball courts or other amenities, is the way to go.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Nathaniel?
Thank you. I wanted to address several things because a couple people asked questions and maybe their question or comment didn't get addressed, and I wanted to not leave it hanging. One gentleman asked about the parking and for us to not mess up the parking, making it harder to get in the community center. And he is correct on an important point is that the community center is very heavily used, and a lot of us would like to not walk real far. And so I wanted to point out that the option, you know what, I'm going to be transparent here. I personally have studied all these options in depth. In fact, the board, all of the board members have studied these options in great depth and attended meetings with CDD, the contractors. We talked to the land engineers, what have you. We just went in depth quite a bit. In fact, some of us even more than others. And to me, I really, really like what is called option 12 on the slideshow. And that is where we add 2 courts as we push the other ones over towards court 2 tennis. And I like that one for several reasons. In my personal opinion, it allows us to add without subtracting. It does not move anything in the parking lot. So the parking will not be adjusted at all. And it gives us a chance to go with option number 17 later, where we're talking about adding more pickleball courts later, possibly, if it's found to be needed, by adding the parking spots across the road. Now, adding parking spots across the road will take a long time, and we'll have to actually spend money out of the capital account over there to build a parking lot over there before we can even, try to do anything over here. And then when we do, and we'll go back to that question about parking, if we build 2 more pickleball courts later, option 17, a couple years from now maybe, and they would go into what is the parking lot right now, because this first option does not change the parking lot at all. That curb is actually not going to move at all. So when you come in, you're really not going to see. Somebody else asked about the plan to look at it and what have you, but really it's not going to look drastically different than it does now. You're going to drive in and directly on your right, some of the pickleball courts right up next to the sidewalk. So later, if we were to add pickleball courts later, and that's, we don't know if we will or not, but if we did, those would be in the parking lot a little bit. They're not huge, be in the parking lot a little bit, destroy a few parking spots. So we would need some parking spots across the road to get permission to build pickleball courts and to replace what parking spots we destroyed. So that's why that option cannot be done at the same time as the first option, because you can't get the cart ahead of the horse on that, because you can't even like go out there and make the path, because those spots will get destroyed and we have to first replace them before the county will let us destroy any spots. So step 1 has to come before step 2. So I'll be transparent. I'm very much in favor of option number 12. Some other people asked, could we just send out some options to the community to vote on? And I wanted to address that. The board, you've elected your board members, and we had to go, as I mentioned, to a lot of meetings and look at a lot of charts, talk to engineers, and we actually went out there with tape measures and tried to figure out where could we put a court, and it got down to a small amount of inches to where one would fit or not. And Brian's a genius. He was always thinking, and I think he woke up in the middle of the night and said, what if we move the light poles over a little, we'll get 4 more inches. And sure enough, he came up with a genius idea to squeeze in. It's like the world's worst Tetris game, this tiny piece of land we have trying to add pickleball courts. So the board understands these issues better than anybody else in the community, because we've had to go to all these meetings, look at all these drawings, and talk to all these people. So to me, it felt a little, seemed a little backwards to have us investigate the issue in great depth, come up with our best option that we can agree on, and then a couple other options we think are not our best option, and then send them out to people who did not go to any of these meetings to vote on. And so for that reason, I feel very comfortable that I would like for the people who were assigned jury duty to come up with their number 1 verdict. And so so I feel very comfortable with what my knowledge is on this subject. Another question is about money. I've told everybody about the capital account and the resale fees. Now I want to break it down to where it's even more simple. Thank God for this other treasurer. I love numbers, guys. He pointed this out about the cost per house and how it's not even going to be a cost per house. Every year, since Pelican Marsh has been completely full of houses and condos and people who have lived in it for a while, since the pipeline got full, the resales, people selling their house, is about 100 a year. And the reason is because we die. And so eventually you're going to sell your house. Your greedy kids are going to sell your house. And so about every year, it's really close to 100 houses and condos a year that go out. And that is 100 resale fees come in. And this year, we're expecting it to be lower because of the economy and because we were so high in last, but eventually it's going to level out. Okay, so that's that first 30 houses, the first 30 houses that sell every year, ballpark, all that money goes into your reserve account. And that's where, and I'm going to answer another person's question, that's where the money comes from for that roof and that parking lot. All that money for that expensive roof and that parking lot all come out of the reserve account, where the first 30 houses every year, about those resale fees went into. And then boom, the rest of the year, the money, the board votes for the rest of the money to go into the capital account. So it takes if we spend about 400 grand, that's about 53 houses. So the first 30 will go into, the first 30 houses go in reserve, and the next 53 would cover my favorite choice of the options here. So it's not even, none of us going to have to write a check. It's not going to take years to come up with the money or anything like that. It's a pretty simple transaction. And And I think lastly, I would want to agree with, Brian's last thought, that we met with the contractors. They're a good sized company. They've done, lots of work for us before. In fact, just recently, they rebuilt Court 2 and Court 3. They dug it all up. This same company, that gave us a quote and said what they could do and when they could do it. So where we're getting our numbers from, as the same company that's done this other work for us, we just hired them a few months ago to rebuild Court 2, so that underneath Court 2, it has all new plumbing and new clay and all that. So we're comfortable with this company, and they have given us a quote. So some people say, well, don't hurry. Well, once they've given us a quote, there's no point in us going back to them and say, come on, are you sure about that quote, several more times? They're sure, they know what they're doing, and so I feel comfortable that they know that their quote is a real number. So there's not like some new information we need to go gather. So we have good information. So anyway, that's my opinion on the subject. Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Mann. The shed?
Yeah.
Okay, the sheds are not touched. We're gonna, when I say courts, my favorite option was to take the the 4 pickleball courts we have now and rebuild them right up next to the teaching court. So in other words, take that big gap that's in between them, and then also take the space that's between the sidewalk and those pickleball courts, take that space. So you got enough space on each side of the pickleball courts that if it were added together, you could add 2 more pickleball courts. And that's my option. I really would like for us to just take those 2 big gaps and make 2 new courts right there without destroying anything else. Thank you.
So I'm the last one in the circle, and I don't think anybody's mentioned this, but we're trying to solve for about a 3-month problem. Which those 3 months we have everybody here in season. So the other months of the year, it's not such an issue. It's not an issue right now. I played tennis on court 2 yesterday, and there was available pickleball courts, and that's the same thing with the tennis. You can walk down and you can see it. So this is a problem we're trying to solve for 3 months of the year. As I was thinking through this, there's no perfect solution, but probably the number one thing that, if you know me as a person or a leader, is the health of the community was my number one determining factor. That, you know, we've got harmony in the community now. Like I said, several years ago when we built the pickleball courts, I heard all of the tension in the community. And as I was joining the board, that was one of the things that I wanted to do, is have collaboration and communication and a cohesive and good community in terms of everybody being able to, you know, live in the same pond. The fact that we've got an opportunity here to add an additional 50% capacity in pickleball courts, the fact that the time that we would be able to pull this together in the next several months, if we can get a decision made today, and looking at not subtracting an amenity went into the equation as well. I wish we could, whether it's an assessment or not, I wish we could spend several $1 million and move across the street and build a huge pickleball complex, but that's not in the cards for us right now. And so in order to give the entire community, all the constituents, an opportunity to improve Pelican Marsh, the option that we're talking about is the one that I would favor.
Yeah, a couple more comments that came in. Go to those. During season only, if the tennis courts are not fully utilized from morning to night, switch court 2 over to pickleball. Then present a long-range plan for the center.
That was one of the options, is to make court 2 a dual purpose court where you could easily do that. You could also roll out a mat during peak periods. That was another option that we reviewed already.
And Brian, to that point, I think you struggle to play pickleball on hard true.
Well, to play it on clay, to play on.
Yes.
I mean, it's done, it's not the experience you're looking for.
Exactly.
I mean, we're trying to build an experience that's in kind with the rest of Southwest Florida. You know, we don't wanna have an experience that continues to be different.
And speaking with the court support staff, logistically, that would be very tough for you to do. They have the maintenance and staff and manpower to do that switchover, be impossible.
Really. Thank you.
I think it's a condo,
All right, yeah, so this is, this particular question about the, House Bill 1203, the best thing to do would be to email me your questions so I can, properly research that, and I'll get back to you with the answer on that question. You want to answer it, Brian?
The question is, do we have any stats, perhaps the reservation bookings on usage of pickleball and tennis versus the population of the entire Pelican Marsh residents? You may recall back in February, on slides 5 and 6, we presented utilization numbers for pickleball and the number of pickleball and tennis players over time. The number of pickleball players at that time, I believe, was 759. Number of tennis players, I think 550, and roughly 250 that did both, for a net of about 1,000 residents that played one or the other or both. The usage was presented at that time. Pickleball courts during season were about 84%, if I remember correctly. And I think, although it was in the presentation, we quoted that tennis courts are utilized during season about 45 to 50% of the time. And those are numbers that are published monthly by the Tennis Advisory Committee.
You answered that.
Just answer. Yeah. I'm glad to that last question. This is a new camera system and microphone system we're using today, and I'm glad that it's working much better for the Zoom calls. So
Congrats.
that's a plus. There we go. That's a question.
Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you to all of you for doing as I asked. That doesn't always happen in my life. I have 3 daughters, so it's difficult for me to get compliance, but I really appreciate everybody keeping their emotions down, your thoughtful comments, also the fact that everybody had the patience to sit through the presentation. We really had one topic on the agenda. We've been here 1 hour and 45 minutes. Everybody stayed. I liked all the comments, the participation by the board. So I think we're at a point where we can sort of come to a conclusion or put forth a motion. I'd like to.
I'd like to present a motion that that the board requests from the owners permission to spend $425,000 on what we're calling option 12 to add 2 pickleball courts. So I motion that the board requests the owner's permission.
Do we have a second?
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, it looks like we have a unanimous vote. Thank you all very much.
You want to go to the timeline?
Okay, is there any other board member comments or anything before we adjourn?
You want to go to the timeline of the process, the voting?
Yes, yes. If you'll just hang on, we'll go through that. Thanks. Okay.
All right, so now the timeline for the voting, because the amount of this project will be over $400,000, or over 250. It's gonna be approximately estimated $400,000. We need to send a proxy vote out to membership to get their vote to approve this money. So the plan is to send out this proxy within the next week and a half. We have to give 14 days notice for the meeting, so.
Hey, everyone, we haven't concluded the meeting, so if we could just, settle down the discussion. We just need another 2 minutes to wrap this up. We're still in.
Thank you.
Welcome to stay. We haven't adjourned. Thank you.
So the plan is we have the proposed proxy ready to go. It'll go to the printers tomorrow. It's about 7 to 10 days to get that printed and then mailed out to the residents. Okay, we have to give 14 days notice of a special members meeting where the vote would be held and counted. So the projected date of that special board meeting or members meeting would be on June 13th. So you'd have to have your proxy turned in by that date of your vote to approve the spending the money. Very good. And then once that is approved, we have the authority to move forward. Then we can confirm with the contractor, sign the contract and have him hopefully start the project mid-July. And
You
then,
said 3.5 months from the time you
and
start.
then it's about 3.5 months. So the goal is November 1st at the very latest.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So motion.
Second. Okay, meeting's adjourned.
I can talk.